Your 70 kL truck is unfixable and dealerships are running out of mechanics. A man in the Midwest bought a 2025 F-150 in August of last year. Nothing exotic. He drove it home, and a few weeks later, the recall letter showed up saying a sensor had failed and the entire airbag system had shut itself down as a precaution. So he did the right thing. He took it in, and the service department told him the sensor was on national back order, and their best estimate for when one might exist was somewhere in 2027, up to 2 years, on a truck with about 2,000 miles on it. Understand what happened there? Because it is not what most people think. The truck was not totaled. It was not in a wreck. It ran perfectly. The bill was $0, and it was still, for practical purposes, unfixable because the part did not exist and there was nobody to install it if it had. That is the thing nobody warned you about when trucks crossed $70,000. It is not that they break more. It is that when they break, the system that is supposed to put them back together is coming apart at the same time. Parts that do not arrive, software your local shop is locked out of, and a technician shortage that is now measured in the hundreds of thousands. So here's what we're doing today. First, what you are actually paying, because that number moved in the last 12 months and nobody announced it. Then the 3 separate locks that make a modern truck unrepairable, and I will show you each one with the receipts. Then the 2 failures on the road right now that cost more than the truck is worth to fix. And at the end, the specific moves that decide whether your truck sits at a dealership for 6 weeks or gets bought back at full price. That last part is worth real money and almost nobody knows it. If you own a truck built in the last 5 years, stay to the end. There is one piece of paper involved, and the day you get it is the whole ball game. And subscribe before we start, because nobody in this business is going to mail you a letter about any of what follows. Let us start with the price, because the price is where the arithmetic stops making sense. Cox Automotive puts the average transaction price on a full-size pickup at $66,427 as of June 2026, up 2.1% from a year ago. For comparison, the average price of every new vehicle sold in this country is $49,758. So a full-size truck now carries a $17,000 premium over the average car in America, and that premium is growing. Look at what the trims actually cost. A 28026 F-150 XLT is $48,490. A Lariat is $62,355, and a King Ranch is $68,620. Those figures include destination, so that is a real number you could write a check against. Then the top of the range crosses a line that used to belong to luxury sedans. Platinum, $71,595. Raptor, $81,800. Now, here's the part that will annoy you, and it should. Destination and handling on an F-150 is now $2,795. That fee has gone up $1,100 since 2020, and you cannot decline it, negotiate it, or opt out of it. General Motors was more aggressive. The 2025 Silverado shipped with a destination charge of $1,995, and in less than a year, they raised it 3 separate times to $2,795, matching Ford exactly. Ram sits at $2,595. Cox Automotive's Aaron Keating gave the explanation in 2 words: tariffs, full stop. Her point being that destination is the one line on the window sticker where a manufacturer can raise your price without touching the number in the advertisement. $800 added to a mandatory fee in under 12 months and not one press release about it. That takes a certain kind of confidence. So before you go any further, here's something you can do this afternoon that costs nothing and tells you more than any road test. Call the service department of the dealership you would actually buy from, not the sales floor. Service. Ask them 2 questions. What is your next available appointment for a diagnostic? Not an oil change, a diagnostic. And how many factory certified master technicians do you currently have on the floor? Write down what they say. If the diagnostic date is 4 weeks out and they have 1 master tech covering 3 brands, you have just learned everything you need to know about what owning that truck is going to feel like. That 1 phone call is worth more than every review you will watch this month, and no salesman on earth will suggest you make it. That is the kind of thing that never appears in a brochure, and it is exactly what the 500,000 Miles Car Care Bible is built out of. There's a section in there called the Mechanic Decoder, 30 of the most common shop upsells, what they actually tell you, what is true, and the exact sentence to say back. And the glove box checklists include a service record log, which, as you are about to see, is the single piece of paper that decides who wins an argument with a manufacturer. $27, that is less than 1 hour of shop labor almost anywhere in the country. Scan the code on screen, use the link in the description, or go straight to carcarebible.com. All right. Lock number 1, the parts. In 2026, through the middle of June, Ford recalled 11,234,000 vehicles in the United States. That is not a typo, and it is not a decade's worth. That is roughly half of 1 calendar year. It works out to 50.2% of every vehicle recalled in this country this year from 1 manufacturer. But the raw number is not the interesting part. This is, in a single week in June, Ford issued 4 separate campaigns covering about 125,000 vehicles, and every one of them carried the same notation in the federal database. Previously repaired incorrectly. 10,742 F-150s whose shifters could jam between reverse and neutral. 91,198 F-150s with headlight defects. These were trucks that had already been fixed, and already been handed back to their owners with the problem still in them or a new one installed alongside it. Then there is the weight itself. There is a rollaway defect affecting 272,645 F-150 trucks, where a binding condition in the parking module means the transmission may not fully lock into park. That matters most to exactly the person watching this because it shows up when you are unhitching a trailer. Owners were reporting 4-week waits just for a diagnostic appointment, and the software patch itself was locked out until a remedy date in July of this year. One owner was refused a loaner on the grounds that there was nothing to install yet. I want to give credit where it is earned, because that is how you know I'm not just swinging. There's a separate trailer control module problem covering 4,380,000 vehicles, everything from 2021 F-150s through 2026 Transits, and Ford fixed that one over the air starting in March. No dealer visit, no appointment, no loaner. That is the right answer, and it saves several million people a wasted Tuesday. But here is the Ram side of it, and this is the one that made me sit back. A 2025 Ram 1500 owner posted that his truck had been at the dealership for 6 weeks because the power distribution center was on national back order, and he had been told there were 400 units ahead of him in line. 400 500. Another owner's truck went in on the 16th of March and was still there in June. 3 months. A brand new truck, a payment due every 30 days, sitting on a lot behind a building. Put the numbers down for a second because the numbers are not really the story. The story is that when a part goes on national back order, there is no mechanism anywhere in the system that tells you how long. Not a date, not a queue position. Unless someone at the counter happens to be generous, your truck simply enters a room and the door closes and you keep paying for it the entire time. That is a different problem than a truck that breaks, and it needs a different defense, which we will get to. Lock number 2 is the software, and this one is quieter, but it is the one that will outlive all of us. Your truck is not a machine with a computer in it anymore. It is a network with an engine attached, and almost every meaningful repair now ends with a laptop because the replacement module has to be programmed, married to the vehicle, and calibrated before anything works. Here's what that costs the man who has been fixing your vehicles for 30 years. To get the factory diagnostic software, Ford charges an independent shop roughly $2,500 a year. General Motors about $1,200. Tesla $3,188. That is per brand, per year, forever. A general repair shop that wants to keep serving the customers it already has is looking at a 5-figure annual bill before it buys a single wrench. And it does not stop at software. A modern alignment rack runs around $70,000. The target boards used to calibrate the cameras and radar behind your windshield run about $30,000 a set, and different manufacturers want different sets. Lucas Underwood, who owns a shop in North Carolina, put the time change plainly. An alignment used to take about an hour and a half. Today, the same job is 3 to 4 hours, and it can run as long as 9. Let me teach you the mechanism, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Forget the word calibration. Picture the forward camera as a rifle scope bolted to the top of your windshield. It is not looking at the road. It is looking at a spot it has been told is straight ahead. Move the glass, move the mirror bracket, change the ride height with a lift kit or even a heavy load in the bed, and the scope is now aimed at a slightly different place than the truck's brain believes. The lane keeping and the automatic braking still work perfectly. They just work perfectly on a version of the road that is not quite where the road is. That is why a windshield on a truck now runs $400 to $1,400 once you include the calibration, and why a shop that skips it is handing you back a truck that is confidently wrong. The federal bill that would force manufacturers to hand over this access, the Repair Act, was reintroduced in the House in February 2025 and in the Senate that April. It has not passed. Massachusetts has a voter-approved law on the books that survived a court challenge and covers 2022 and newer vehicles. Maine passed one that took effect in January 2025 and then stalled because nobody set up the entity to administer it. So, depending on which state line you happen to live inside, you either have the right to have your truck repaired where you choose, or you have a nice idea. And the practical result is not a policy debate. It is that the queue at the dealership gets longer every year because the dealership is increasingly the only door. If this is useful to you, subscribe. This channel exists to keep money in your pocket that other people are counting on getting. Lock number 3 is the people, and this is the one with the hardest numbers behind it. The Tech Force Foundation tracks the technician workforce every year, and their 2026 report is bleak in a very specific way. The country needs 241,000 842 new entrant technicians per year. Post-secondary programs graduated 101,743. That is a shortfall of 140,000 people annually. And it is not because young people stopped enrolling. Completions actually grew 7.5% last year. The pipeline is filling. It is just filling a bucket with a hole in it. Here is the hole. In 2025, the industry hired 1.18 million technicians and lost 1.14 million. Net gain for the entire year, about 32,000 people against an annual need north of 240,000. They are not failing to recruit. They are failing to keep anybody, and it is worst exactly where you live. In diesel, which is what your Super Duty or your 3/4 ton runs on, 52% of the annual demand goes unmet. Half every year. Cox Automotive found that 57% of dealership service departments report they are not fully staffed, and 58% name manufacturer parts delays as a top operational problem. Those are the same two locks I just described, confirmed from inside the building by the people who own it. And here's the demographic detail that ought to worry everybody. As of a few years ago, roughly half the independent shop owners in this country were 60 years old or older. That is not a workforce problem in 10 years. That is a workforce problem on a schedule. So that is the machine. Parts that do not come, software the neighborhood cannot open, and not enough hands either way. Now let me show you what happens when all three land on one engine at the same time. In April 2025, General Motors recalled about 600,000 trucks and SUVs in the United States over the 6.2-liter V8, the L87. The defect traces to connecting rods and crankshafts, contamination, and out-of-specification parts from the supplier, Silverado 1500, Sierra 1500, Tahoe, Suburban, Yukon, Escalade. The good engines and the bad ones came off the same line. The remedy is where it gets interesting. A technician runs a diagnostic test that listens for abnormal vibration and noise inside the engine. If your engine passes, you get an oil change to a heavier viscosity, 0W40 instead of 0W20, a new oil fill cap, and you go home. If it fails, you get a new engine at no charge. General Motors estimated about 3% would need the engine. Then this year, the federal safety regulators opened a formal engineering analysis on the 20th of August and expanded the population under review to 997,743 vehicles, model years 2021 through 2026. What triggered it was 690 new failure reports on engines that had already been through the recall. 473 of them failed after the oil remedy. 26 of them failed after receiving a complete replacement engine. General Motors' own tally with duplicates stripped out sits north of 6,000 complaints. 26 engines that failed after being replaced with new engines. There's a word for a fix that has to be fixed, and the word is not fix. Out of pocket, without coverage, owners are being quoted $11,500 to $13,500 for a crate engine and the labor to install it. One owner posted a $12,400 estimate on a truck that might be worth $35,000. Now, here's the part that is worth actual money to you, and I want you to hear it twice. General Motors put a special coverage program on these engines. 10 years or 150,000 miles from the in-service date. 10 years, 150,000 miles. That is genuinely generous, and they deserve credit for it. But owners have reported walking into dealerships where the service writer did not know the program existed. So if you own a 6.2, you do not ask whether your engine is covered. You tell them there's a 10-year, 150,000 mile special coverage on the L87, and you would like it documented on the repair order. Say it that way. The diesel side is worse, and it has been worse for longer. The high pressure fuel pump on the 6.7 Power Stroke, the one diesel owners call the CP4, does not fail politely. When it goes, it grinds itself apart internally and pushes metal shavings through the injectors, the rails, the lines, and the tank. You do not replace a pump. You replace a fuel system. Documented repair bills run $12,000 to $17,000, and the range in the litigation runs from $8,000 up to $20,000. One plaintiff in Texas was billed $12,838 on a truck with 23,000 miles on the odometer. Ford issued a recall in January 2025 covering 295,449 trucks with the newer pump. Trucks from 2011 through 2019 got nothing. The class action is still open as of the middle of this year. General Motors settled its version of the same argument for $50 million in May 2025. Here's the number I keep coming back to. A survey found 58% of American drivers could not cover an unexpected repair of $1,000 or more without going into debt. And the national average shop labor rate is $132 an hour, ranging from around $100 in West Virginia to $161 in Alaska, with dealerships sitting at the top of that range because of overhead and factory training. Repair and maintenance costs are up 36% since May of 2022, according to federal data. Meanwhile, the average vehicle on American roads is 12.8 years old, a record because people are holding on. So we have the most expensive trucks ever built, the most expensive repairs ever built, the thinnest bench of people qualified to do the work, and a nation of owners who mostly cannot absorb a four-figure surprise. That is not a coincidence. Those things are causing each other, all right? That is the problem. Here's what you actually do about it, and this is the part I would tell you across my kitchen table. First, and this is the big one, the repair order is the asset, not the repair. Every state lemon law counts days out of service, and in most places, the threshold is 30 cumulative days. California, 30 days or 4 repair attempts and only 2 attempts if the defect is a serious safety issue. Florida, 30 days within the first 24 months or 24,000 miles. Texas 30, Michigan 30, and Michigan explicitly counts days spent waiting on parts. New Jersey 20. Massachusetts is the strictest in the country at 11 working days. The days do not have to be consecutive. Now, the trick you need to know about. Service advisors will sometimes hold off on printing a formal repair order until the part physically arrives. Sounds harmless. It is not. Your clock starts when the repair order is written. So if the paperwork is dated the day the part shows up, 6 weeks of your life just vanish from the record. So the rule is the repair order gets printed and handed to you the day you hand over the keys with the date in, the symptom in your words, and the promised completion date on it, not when the part lands. That day, if they will not print it, you take a photo of the key drop with the date on your phone and you email the service manager a short summary the same afternoon. So there is a timestamp that is not theirs. Second, once you are anywhere near your state's number, you notify the manufacturer directly in writing by certified mail to the arbitration or customer assistance address in your owner's manual. Not the dealership. The dealership is not the manufacturer and cannot buy your truck back. Certified mail exists so that a date becomes a fact instead of an opinion. Third, before you authorize any repair anywhere, ask one question. Does this job require factory programming to complete? If the answer is yes, an independent shop without that brand's software cannot finish it, and you need to know that before the truck is in pieces on a lift, not after. That single question has saved more people a tow bill than any tool in the box. Fourth, run your own vehicle identification number through the federal recall lookup twice a year and ask your dealer specifically for open special coverage programs and service bulletins, which are separate from recalls and do not generate a letter in your mailbox. The 10-year engine coverage we just talked about is exactly that kind of program. Free money that expires if you do not ask for it. And fifth, if you are buying, buy the powertrain that is boring, not the one that is new. On the General Motors side, that means the 5.3 over the 6.2 until that engineering analysis closes, and it has not closed. On a Ram, it means not being the first owner of a first-year engine architecture. On the Ford side, it means understanding that the $1,100 destination increase since 2020 bought you nothing you can touch. So here is my verdict, and I will stand behind it. I would not buy a top trim half-ton right now, not at $71,595 and not at $81,800. The top trim adds modules, cameras, screens, and air suspension, and every one of those is another part that can go on national back order and another calibration your local shop is locked out of. You are paying a premium for the privilege of a longer wait. What I would buy is the working trim, an XLT or a Lariat, the proven engine, four-wheel drive, and I would keep my out-the-door number under $65,000, including that destination fee and every piece of paper the finance office slides across the desk. Below that line, a full-size truck is still a rational purchase. Above it, you are financing complexity, and complexity is the thing that cannot be repaired. And if you already own one, this is the whole game. Your truck is only unfixable for as long as you let the paperwork stay casual. Documented days out of service are leverage. Undocumented days out of service are just days of your life. Now, the honest limits on all of that. Lemon law thresholds vary by state, and some of them have windows that close at 24 months or 24,000 miles, so check your own state's number rather than the one I read out. And a buyback is a real process, not a magic word. It takes months and it takes records, which brings me to the one thing to do this week. Go out to the truck, open the glove box, and find out whether you have every repair order for every visit since you bought it. If there is a gap, call the dealership and ask them to email you the service history. They will do it. It takes them 4 minutes and it costs nothing. That file is the difference between a complaint and a case. Then tell me in the comments, what is the longest your truck has ever sat at a dealership waiting on a part? And did they give you a repair order the day you dropped it off or the day the part arrived? Put the make and the model year in there too. I read them, and honestly, the comments section on this channel has better field data than most of the studies I just quoted. If any of this saved you a phone call, subscribe. 20 minutes a week, and the only agenda is that you stop paying for things you did not have to pay for. Everything I know about keeping one of these alive past the warranty is written down in the 500,000 miles Car Care Bible at carcarebible.com. Link in the description. Next time we are going through the extended warranty contracts, they sell you in the finance office at 11 at night, and specifically the exclusion buried in most of them that voids coverage on exactly the failures we talked about today. Bring your paperwork. You are going to want to read along